This line chart tracks wealth distribution from the 1960s to the present day. You might expect to see a closing gap following the triumphs of the civil rights era, but the data points in the exact opposite direction. Poverty rates have remained largely stagnant, structural unemployment persists in major cities, and the wealth gap between Black and white Americans is actively widening. Society typically points to a specific culprit for this lack of progress. We are taught that racism is primarily a social issue, driven by individual prejudice, personal bigotry, and feelings of hatred. Author and researcher Dr. Claude Anderson offers a different diagnosis. He argues that racism is actually an economic construct, engineered by groups to control wealth, power, and resources. Under this lens, the historical push for social integration achieved the opposite of empowerment. Instead of consolidating Black wealth and businesses to build a strong internal economy, integration acted as a weakening process that scattered those resources outward into the broader market. You cannot fix an economic deficit with a social solution. Operating in a capitalistic system while pursuing moral victories simply guarantees failure. The American economy did not evolve by accident. It was built exactly to specification, guided by an original architectural plan. Look closely at the legal codes that founded the country. The U.S. Constitution functioned as an early affirmative action plan for wealth creation, designed to explicitly exclude specific groups from acquiring land or capital. Within this blueprint, Black people were legally classified not as citizens, but as property. They were the capital equipment utilized to generate unearned benefits and wealth for others. That multi-generational extraction of free labor provided the raw capital that built the modern financial system. The massive corporate wealth traded on Wall Street today traces directly back to those early unearned benefits. This visual data comparison tracks the bounce rate of a dollar. In some communities, a single dollar circulates 8 to 12 times. In the modern Black community, that dollar leaves after 0 to 1 bounces, flowing out to external businesses. When you combine that original historical blueprint with the continuous scattering of modern capital, the result is clear. Black Americans have been left to operate as economic guests in spaces owned and controlled by others. To correct this, Dr. Anderson proposes a new framework, an animated blueprint of a 5-story building representing a vertical strategy. The first floor is economics. A community must pool capital and circulate money internally, otherwise the structure collapses. The second floor is politics. Voting is largely ineffective without an economy to back it up. Wealth from the first floor must fund campaigns and hold politicians accountable. This leverage takes us to the third floor, the courts and police. Justice systems respond directly to groups with economic power. On the fourth floor, media. Independent capital allows a group to own communication channels, the only way to control narrative. The fifth and final floor is education. Getting a degree is only useful if the youth return to build their own communities rather than external systems. Power is strictly vertical. It has to be built from a base of internal economic strength. It cannot be negotiated horizontally by simply aligning with every other broad social cause. Adopting this vertical blueprint requires discarding broad diluted labels. Terms like minorities or people of color erase specific historical experiences. Instead, Dr. Anderson emphasizes the concept of exceptionality. Black Americans have a 500-year history that is entirely unique and cannot be casually lumped in with other demographics. Consider the specifics. This is the oldest non-immigrant group in the country. It is the only group brought to the United States to be enslaved, and the only group that faced severe legal punishment simply for learning to read and write. Compare that to the historical immigrant experience. Millions of newcomers were granted millions of acres of free land through government programs, providing them with the immediate resources needed to build intergenerational wealth. Recognizing this unique status demands a specific strategy. A community must move as a fist rather than disjointed fingers, operating strictly as a unified, uncompromising economic and voting bloc. In a capitalistic system built on competition for resources, survival does not come from asking for moral equality. It comes from understanding the rules of the game and playing to win.